All right, let's talk about a huge problem in artificial intelligence that's kind of hiding in plain sight. Today, we're diving into what I'm calling the algorithm's blind spot, and we're going to look at what happens when our very best technology learns to be ableist.
So let's just get right to it with a question. If an AI was spitting out racist or sexist content, you'd demand a fix, right? There'd be immediate public outrage, because as a society, we've decided that's just not acceptable. So why do we seem to have a totally different standard when that same kind of bias is aimed at people with disabilities?
And that really brings us to a tale of two biases. We need to explore why we're okay with one kind of algorithmic harm but not another, and what that says about our own blind spots.
Look, when it comes to racism or sexism, we've gotten to a point where we understand that tech reflecting a biased society isn't a neutral act. It's actually a form of harm. An algorithm that just copies historical injustice is now seen as actively doing something wrong. Neutrality is complicity.
But here's the thing, that logic just seems to stop dead when we start talking about disability. All of a sudden the excuse, oh, the AI is just reflecting the data, becomes okay again. Neutrality is suddenly a reasonable position, not a harmful one. So why the double standard? Well, to get it, we first have to be really clear about what we're even talking about.
So what is ableism exactly? Before we can understand how a machine learns it, we really have to get a handle on what it is and where it comes from in the first place.
And this is absolutely crucial. Ableism isn't just about being mean or having some personal prejudice. No, it's a whole system. It's this deep-seated set of assumptions about what a normal body is supposed to be, what a productive mind looks like, and who has value in our society. And because it's structural, it gets baked into everything, our companies, our laws, and yeah, our technology, usually without anyone even thinking about it.
And this quote right here, it just nails the real danger. The biggest threat isn't some programmer with malicious intent. It's the quiet, unchallenged assumption that disabled people are an edge case. You know, a group that's just optional to think about when we're building the systems that run our entire world.
Okay, this distinction is so important. When most of us hear the word disability, our minds immediately jump to what's on the left. Things you can see, a wheelchair, a white cane, but the reality? The vast majority of disabilities are completely invisible. Things like chronic pain, PTSD, depression. This huge gap between what we picture and what is real, that is precisely where an algorithm's blind spot begins.
So how does this bias actually play out? Let's look at some real evidence of how AI doesn't just reflect our blind spots, it actually makes them way bigger.
Okay, let's do a little thought experiment. Remember, these AI models learn by just hoovering up billions of images and text files from all over the internet. They're basically just pattern matchers. So imagine you go to one of those AI image generators and you type in that simple prompt, "a person with disabilities," 1,000 times. What do you think you'd get back?
And here are the results. It's pretty shocking. Out of those 1,000 images, you get around 700 showing stereotypical, visible disabilities, most of them people in wheelchairs. And what about invisible disabilities? Fewer than 50. The AI has essentially learned from us that the huge majority of disabled people, well, they basically don't exist. That disparity is just staggering. What's going on here has a name. It's symbolic reduction. The AI has learned from our culture that disability means something you can see. This creates a really nasty visibility trap. If your disability isn't obvious, it gets treated as less real, less valid. The AI then takes that harmful idea and automates it, scaling it across the entire globe. Now, an AI doesn't learn this stuff in a vacuum. It learns from our world, and especially from the world of work. The way we talk and the systems we build, that becomes the training data for these ableist algorithms.
And you see this really dangerous rebranding happening right in front of us. Things like remote work or a flexible schedule, these were fought for as accommodations, as civil rights, necessary for people to have equal access to a job. But now they're marketed as these trendy perks, like a free gym membership or something. This shift completely erases their origin as a life-changing necessity for so many disabled workers.
And here's why that is so dangerous. A right is protected. A perk is conditional. It can be taken away when the economy gets tough. It can be denied by a manager who's having a bad day. It can be reserved only for the top performers. For disabled workers who depend on these things, this makes their ability to even have a job incredibly fragile.
This all brings us to a strange paradox. We tend to think of technology as the solution, right? But what happens when assistive tech, especially the new AI-powered tools, is designed with these same biases baked right in? well, you can end up with help that doesn't actually help at all.
So let's break down how this happens. First, society has a super rigid, narrow idea of what a productive worker looks like. Step 2, an AI gets trained on tons of data that reflects that narrow norm. 3, the assistive tech is then designed to help the user meet that biased standard. And the end result? The technology, the very thing meant to help, ends up just pressuring the disabled worker to conform to the broken system that excluded them in the first place.
And the problem really boils down to this. The goal of the technology becomes normalization, not real inclusion. Like the quote says, you're supported only insofar as you can approximate a non-disabled norm. The tech doesn't challenge the biased system, it just pressures you to try and fit into it better.
So, where does that leave us? I think the key thing to take away from all this is that this isn't just some technical glitch. It's not a simple data problem. It is a fundamental issue of justice and design.
Whenever tech companies get called out for this kind of bias, they often pull out what's known as the mirror defense. They argue, hey, our AI is just a mirror. It's just passively reflecting the world as it is, all the biases included. We didn't create the problem, we're just showing it to you. But, and this is a huge but, an AI is not a passive mirror. A mirror doesn't scale its reflection to billions of people. A mirror doesn't automate hiring decisions or medical diagnoses. AI is an amplifier. It takes our existing biases and shoots them across the globe at lightning speed, making them more powerful and way harder to fight. And that amplification, well, that comes with a ton of responsibility. So what's the path forward? First, we have to stop treating disability like an edge case. It is a fundamental part of the human experience. Second, disabled people have to be in the room as experts from day one, involved in the design process, not just brought in to clean up the mess after the harm has already been done. And finally, we have to accept that justice and inclusion are never, ever built by accident. They are always the result of deliberate, intentional choices.
And this brings us to our final thought. Technology is never neutral. It is soaked in the values of the people who make it. It actively shapes our world, our beliefs, everything. So the question we have to ask ourselves, all of us, is what kind of world are we programming it to create? One that just endlessly repeats our worst biases on a global scale? Or one that intentionally builds a more just and inclusive future? The choice is ours.